What is spiritual evolution and what does it have to do with the end of everything? This global shift that's happening right now that I'm sure all of you out there who are watching this can feel. Now, the thing is that the term spiritual evolution, we use it from time to time, not often, but from time to time. And it's also thrown around a lot in New Age and spiritual communities. But what is spiritual evolution exactly? What is it? Now, remember, we understand that we want to be able to understand metaphysics rationally, and that's what our system of meta-rationalism is all about. And we, as the Neogenian, are the new beginning. All of this ties together hand in hand. This idea of a personal spiritual evolution that was occurring in us and collectively, but we want to understand what's really happening here because there's a lot of misinformation out there and confusion about what exactly is occurring. And we don't want to just throw words around like spiritual evolution without actually knowing what's being said, or else it's just going to be a bunch of word salad. We're not going to be able to understand ourselves. We want to really understand ourselves, what's happening with us, and what's happening in the world around us, because obviously there's a global shift happening right now. You see all the chaos in the world, all the, in tandem, you have people waking up, becoming more spiritually evolved, which we'll talk about, and then people who are trying to drag the world in the opposite direction. And you see this clash with loss of rights and loss of humanitarian efforts and a global division that's being occurred to try and prevent this global shift from happening. So we are really on this precipice of a global transformation that's being reflected in us and in the world. So we're going to understand this on a really detailed and rigorous level here. But before we begin, I want to remind you, hey, if you enjoy my work, please like and subscribe. And if you enjoy it, consider supporting on Patreon. It's the best way to support my work. And you'll get access to all our members-only videos, a new members-only video every single week. You can also access that by hitting the join button right here on YouTube and selecting tier 2 or higher. We're actually having a members-only video right after this called Is Mathematics Invented or the Cosmic Code? And that's going to be a really good one. Remember as well that there's a lot of scams in the comments. People pretending to be me, saying that I have a WhatsApp or a Telegram to message them or something. I don't know. It's a bunch of BS. Keep an eye out for that. That's not me. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't want us to get this information out there. And they are spreading a lot of disinformation, a lot of misinformation about me and our group and what we're doing. So just keep your eye out. Don't believe the BS. Use your mind. Use reason. All right, here we go. What is spiritual evolution and what does it have to do with the end of everything that is occurring right now? So to answer this question, I'm going to read some quotes from this article on medium.com called Spiritual Evolution and the Creation of a Robust Parallel Society by Lizzie Delfeld. So if you enjoy this, I'm going to read some quotes here from her article. If you enjoy it, go give Lizzie a follow over on medium.com and support her there. So the reason why I want to do this is because I was taking a look at this article and I thought, you know what, a lot of people talk about spiritual evolution and we need to really understand what's going on here and what it has to do with the creation of a new world and the end of the old world. So Lizzie says, perhaps this is simply something I have noticed amongst my own reading and discussions with others, but as of late, I find myself coming across the term spiritual evolution. But what exactly does this mean? The way I have come to understand it anyway. Okay, so let's see how Lizzie defines it and how Lizzie understands it. And then let's really dive into it and see what exactly spiritual evolution is, and of course, how it is tied to all the global events that are occurring right now. So Lizzie says, the way I have come to understand spiritual evolution is something along the lines of an increasing of one's consciousness, becoming aware of our awareness, a continual process of broadening our lens, and through this action, perceiving and accepting previously unseen patterns and archetypes of the mind and psyche. Now, this is actually not too bad. From a lot of spiritualists and new age things, new age ideas out there, it's actually not too bad. I hear some new agers and spiritualists out there talking about enlightenment or spiritual evolution, and they'll just be going, oh, it's about stepping into a mindset of prosperity and abundance. And it's just, very vague and kind of out there and doesn't really say anything at all. But Lizzie has an interesting definition. But it's, and reading this article, I like Lizzie and I like what Lizzie's all about. It's not quite right, but that's okay. Let's learn and understand and dive into this even more deeply. So we're talking about spiritual evolution. Now, what Lizzie has described is absolutely part of spiritual evolution. Lizzie says increasing one's consciousness, becoming aware of our awareness, a continual process of broadening our lens, and through this action, perceiving and accepting previously unseen patterns and archetypes of the mind and psyche. And again, this is actually pretty good, but we can understand it a lot better. So becoming aware of our awareness, process of broadening our lens, understanding unseen patterns and archetypes. So we can understand that becoming aware of awareness is self-awareness. So becoming aware of awareness is self-awareness. When you become aware, that I'm aware. And that is one step on the ladder of spiritual evolution. So let's talk about this. What is reality? Reality is a system of mathematical frequency patterns. That's what reality is. Existence is thought, existence is mind, existence is mathematical frequency. Each and every single one of us is a eternal mind, what we call a zeta or zetic mind. Now, the reason why we use the term zeta is to distinguish it from the term zero, okay? Because a zeta or eternal mind is one infinite fullness that voids to zero. So when you typically think of the concept of zero, you think of something that's empty, that is a nothingness, that is a total and complete absence of something. However, a zeta is a triple concept. It's a 0, a 1, and an infinity. It's a 1 because it's one mind. It's an infinity because it contains every frequency within itself or every mathematical value within itself. And it's a 0 because when you have an infinity of mathematical values that are complete, that means every positive value has its counterpart negative value. So it all balances to 0. To put it really concisely, if you have an infinity of positive energy and an infinity of negative energy such that there's a 1-to-1 ratio, it's going to balance to 0. So you see this concept of a zeta is a triple concept. It's one mind of infinite energy that voids to 0. And so that's what we are. We are eternal minds. Now, reality is composed of eternal minds, zetic minds. Now, you could also call them souls. So when we talk about the evolution of the soul or spiritual evolution, we're talking about the evolution of an eternal mind or a zeta. So in the evolution of eternal mind and a zeta, what does that mean? Well, this mind, in what we all are doing, is exploring our internal patterns, our internal mathematical patterns, our internal mathematical transformations. So we are all internally transforming into various different patterns, various different structures. Now, as we do this on an individual level, this reverberates collectively as well. So this is really important to see that our internal spiritual or mental or mathematical or energetic evolution is tied to the evolution of the universe as well. Now, why is this? This is because the universe is a result or projection of all of our frequencies interacting together. So the physical universe is what you get when all the energy of all minds in existence interact together and form a space-time structure. So mathematically speaking, one would say that we are beings of frequency, and when these frequencies interact and combine, they form a space-time projection. Now, this is known as Fourier mathematics, where you can represent frequency information in another way, where it can be projected as space and or time information. So even though we are evolving ourselves, as we evolve ourselves, physical reality is also evolving, because physical reality is made up from our internal energy, our internal frequency, our internal patterns. And so what we see as physical structures all around us are actually ultimately projections of different frequency structures, finding different structures that are stable. And this is the process of evolution. So the process of evolution is frequent, and this might sound like a lot of information coming at you all at once. And if it does, that's okay, but just stick with me, because remember, what we want to do here is through our system of meta-rationalism, we want to understand metaphysics rationally. So we don't want to be vague or just talk about, having an abundancy mindset or something like this. We want to understand the metaphysical domain as rigorously as science understands the physical domain. And we can absolutely do that through our system of meta-rationalism. Now, when we understand that reality follows these rational rules and laws, we can understand it through the metaphysical domain. So when we see what we would commonly think of as physical evolution, or even the structuring of certain particles, what this is just the formation of different stable frequency structures and their projection. So when you have, different particles and atoms and molecules form, some of these are stable and some of these are unstable. And the stable ones persist and the unstable ones do not persist because they collapse because they're unstable. And these are just frequency structures taking on different patterns. So you have minds, eternal minds, that are exploring their different frequency patterns, their different frequency structures, projected out into the universe. This is the physical universe. Certain structures are stable and persist. Certain structures are not stable and collapse. The stables that are stable and persist combine with other structures to form even higher structures. Some of those are stable and persist, and some of those collapse. Now, you go to, you fast forward to the formation of planets and atmospheres and biomes and environments. Eventually you have avatars or bodies that start to form, like animals. And you have animals, but animals are still just the projections of stable frequency structures. That's what they are. Some of these structures are stable and persist. Some of them collapse and do not. Physically, that manifests as animals mating and reproducing, some of them being predators, some of them being prey, some of them not being able to adapt. See, the ones that cannot adapt and go extinct are structures that were not stable and collapsed. You see the correspondence here. You just have to understand, you have to have those, it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix, who's able to see the code, what we might physically perceive as the evolution of physical animals and the interaction of predator and prey and reproduction, seeing it from the viewpoint of the code of reality, which we're going to be talking about in our members only video, by the way. Mathematics is the code of reality, right after this. But when we see that, we can see that really this is just being represented in a structural way of the interaction of frequencies forming stable structures or collapsing into unstable structures, being represented by their space-time projections. So a lot of, words, but what's the point here? The point here is to show how mental evolution or spiritual evolution is bound up with physical evolution. And this of course gets even more complicated, wherein zetas or minds establish a link to a body that is interface with bodies, and thus they are now experiencing a localized perspective within the space-time domain. In other words, they've incarnated into a body, and now they have different information coming in, which also goes to their spiritual evolution, because they're getting new information instead of just experiencing frequency in a way where it's in a non-local way. Now they're having experiences in the domain of space-time in the world, and this is as one learns and grows and progresses, you're getting information. This goes towards your mental evolution or your spiritual evolution. So what is spiritual evolution? Spiritual evolution is the same thing as mental evolution, which is you as an eternal mind exploring more stable and complex structures of frequency such that you're able to form higher and higher functions of mind. You gain more ability by the more complex and stable structures you form. So just like in evolution, you have evolution occurring physically, different species or whatnot. Internally, you have different structures of mind and evolving up that ladder. So when Lizzie talks about increasing one's consciousness, yes, you're increasing one's consciousness. Becoming aware of awareness, well, that's self-awareness. So what is self-awareness? Right. So one could say that self-awareness is a step in spiritual evolution. But what's really happening there? A new structure of mind is being formed. When a being who is a pure instinctual animal, they're just having awareness. They're hungry, they eat. They want to screw, they screw. They want to fight, they fight. They're just having an aware experience. When you become self-aware, you're aware of your awareness. When you're aware of your awareness, what happens? You develop a new structure in the psyche. When we're talking about, remember, building different structures. Building different structures. A new structure, when you become aware of your awareness, a new structure of the psyche is built. What is that structure? The analog I, or one could say the ego. The analog I is the conceptual model one has of oneself, because as soon as you are aware that you are aware, you form the concept of I, because you go, oh, I am aware right now. Bam, now you have the concept of I. A new structure has been built. Guess what? That gives you new powers and abilities. You can now project into the future, think about the past in a much more structured way. Instead of just being hungry and you eat, you go, oh, I am hungry. I should plan a way to get food for tomorrow because I'm going to be hungry again tomorrow. You see how one has built a new structure in the psyche that now gives one a greater capacity for making decisions and planning. Now, here's the important part and why I've been talking about this and what this has to do with anything and why it's about what's happening in the world right now, all the shifts that we're seeing, all the division, all the waking up, and why it is the end of everything, because it's also the beginning of something new, which is why we are the new beginning. But here's what happens. So we talked about self-awareness. You get the structure in the psyche that is the concept of I. This concept of I allows one to be able to have new abilities, such as planning for the future. Oh, I know that I am going to be hungry tomorrow, so I'm going to plan X, Y, and Z to be able to account for that. You had no concept of I? That would be, now some animals may have instinctual planning. Now, instinctual planning is something different. Self-awareness with the development of the concept of the I allows for a much more complex type of planning. It's conscious planning. It's not just running an instinctual archetypal program. Yeah, some animals have instinctual archetypal programming, but complex planning, such as, we have the ability to build nations and whatever. So states and governments and societies and cultures. So yes, while some animals or insects or creatures might have the instinctual ability to, let's say, plan for a winter or something like that, they're following an instinctual pattern. They can't reason and build, complex cultures and governments and things like this. Yes, there can be colonies. Yes, there can be, planning for periods of the winter, etc. But this is all following an instinctual pattern. It's not using the structure, the concept of I, which allows for a much more complex ability, much more complex planning, because awareness is built into it. It's not just following an instinctual archetypal program. Anyway, I digress. I just want to make that really, really clear so that one sees the difference, that one has new capabilities when a new structure of the psyche develops. So what is happening right now? So spiritual evolution is simply just a mind that is going through the process of organizing itself into different structures and different patterns. You can think of it like a Rubik's Cube. You know, a mind is exploring its different patterns. Of course, much more complex than this. And eventually, when we get to the level of self-awareness, this ends up developing the concept of the I. You could call it the analog I, as Julian Jaynes does, or you can call it the ego in the Jungian sense, or whatever you want to call it. The ego, the analog I, the I, it gets developed as a structure. So what is happening now is that humanity is going through a shift where a new structure of the psyche is beginning to be developed. And this new structure of the psyche is the analog all. So one begins to reach a higher level of consciousness, and there's different levels of higher consciousness. But one really begins to and people go through it in different ways, and there's different steps to it. People might, everyone's journey is a little different. But what's really happening on a major scale right now, the critical aspect, is that a new structure in the psyche is being built, which is the analog all. So we had the concept of I with self-awareness. Now we're reaching a higher awareness with a new structure of the mind being built, the analog all, which is a concept of all reality, a model of all reality, and realizing that we are all interconnected components of that. Ultimately, we should also realize that we are all reality and are all reflections of each other. So this new structure in the psyche is being built. Why is this new structure in the psyche being built? Because of the conditions in the world that is allowing for it to develop in humanity. This is a number of reasons. One, via technology. Two, via global disasters or cataclysmic events that are forcing humanity to evolve or have the collapse of modern civilization. Now, this is what a planet is for. A planet is for providing zetas with a localized experience, so they have a limited environment, so they must learn to synchronize and work together, which ultimately will develop the structure of the analog all. So this structure of the analog all allows one to see not just humanity, but ultimately the entire universe, the cosmos, and every mind in reality. But, let's give humanity a break for a minute and look at on a lower level at just humanity, seeing all of humanity on an interconnected level and how all of our actions reverberate and affect one another as a network. So you have humanity, part of humanity that's beginning to develop this new structure, and then another aspect of humanity that has not developed this new structure and is so still living in a survival mindset. So the analog I creates a survival mindset. The analog I is not a bad thing. It's what allowed us to survive, because it puts I am aware. I have to watch out for myself. I need to be afraid of that which is other than me, because that which is other than me is a threat. And that was very useful for us. It allowed us to survive. It allowed us to evolve. It allowed our avatars to persist. But we need to be done with that now. That doesn't mean to give up our analog I. We want to keep our analog I, but we also want to develop a new structure, the analog all, which sees everyone as an interconnected component of the whole and co-creators in a reality that we're all in a journey together. So instead of seeing the other as, the other is a threat, I need to be afraid, the other is different from me, they're a different race, or they're a different sex, or they're a different, or they have a different orientation, or a different gender, or blah, blah, blah. They're a threat to me. No, with the creation of the analog all, you realize, we're all in this together. We are co-creators. We are here to learn, grow, and experience from each other. And so you have the development of this new structure of the analog all beginning to happen in humanity. It's not people really realize what this is happening, but people but it's a gradual thing. It's not something that just happens immediately. I give examples as though it happens immediately, like a being suddenly go, oh, I am aware. That doesn't happen. Think about, look, was there a time in your life when you were like suddenly like, oh my God, I'm aware? For some people that does kind of happen, but even so, even if it does, right, it's still like this gradual process. You don't go from being an infant who's unaware of their selfhood to the level that you are at right now. Yes, there might be a defining moment where you kind of go, whoa, something's different here. And I think we all kind of have memories where we've experienced something like that, where it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm aware, but it's not, you aren't to the level where you are now. It's, you have this startling perhaps experience, but it's still will gradually progress and progress and progress. So anyway, people are having the same thing is sort of happening when people are like, whoa, something's, wait a minute, we're all part of it. Why are we killing each other? Why are we hating each other? Who cares if we have different color skin, or who cares if we're have different genders, or what? Why are we killing each other for that? What's going on? We're all in this together. Like this is madness. So people are beginning to have this experience for a variety of reasons. And in the past, it's been very, very rare. You've only had, certain enlightened individuals who have had this, but it's starting to become more and more of an occurrence now because of technology and global cataclysmic events, forcing humanity to realize that we need to operate as one. So through technology like social media and all this, we're all becoming very connected, even though we are also disconnected in a certain way, very much so. Even though we're disconnected in that we're having less physical interactions and things like that, and that's not good. That's a topic for another time. But it is at least allowing us to see our interconnected nature. Whereas, let's say some terrible thing happens in another country, before you wouldn't know about it. Maybe like a week later, you'd get some grainy newspaper with the grainy black and white photo. Written up by someone who's probably very, biased about what's going on. And it would seem like very far away, almost fictional, almost like it's not happening. But now you see it almost in real time. If people are live feeding some disaster that's happening or something that's occurring, you're like, oh, wow, this person's just like me and they're going through this hardship. I want to help. And maybe you donate or maybe whatever. Like, wow, and you start to see that everyone around the world has this connected, or we're all going through these same things. We're all connected in very specific ways, and global disasters. In addition to that, like global pandemics or global warming, or especially nuclear war, we're realizing that we have to work together as a unified world, or we're kind of fucked. So this it's being thrown in our face. It's being thrown in our face that humanity is interconnected. And this is causing the development of the analog all in, respectively, in a large number of people. And where it's happening in a large number of people, this is what's moving us towards unity and a new world and a new phase of existence. So this is why we are the new beginning, because we seek to implement a planetary civilization through a new consciousness. Now, a new consciousness is what is necessary for a planetary civilization. A planetary civilization, a teleocratic planetary civilization under how we understand it in the Neogenian system, is a world that is collectively united for the purpose of increasing the quality of life for every individual and the collective. It's a purpose-driven society. Now, the individuals who have this development of the analog all are automatically moving towards this to some degree, at least, or at least trying to create a more unified world to some degree. And then you have those who have not developed this structure, or there are some who have developed this structure in a very malformed way. And that's a topic for another time, but you can develop this structure in a malformed way. And if you develop this structure in a malformed way, it will have negative results. This is why you can have certain people that have reached like some degree of higher consciousness, but they can still be very negative minds, very negative entities, because they have this malformed idea of the analog all, where a properly formed analog all sees us all as an interconnected unity where we are co-creating together. A malformed analog all results in seeing it in a very negatively hierarchical structure. Now, there's nothing wrong necessarily with hierarchy if it's done in a very careful way and done in a way that's not negatively oriented. But this those who have a malformed analog all have almost like a slave-like hierarchical view where it's almost like master and slave, or like a coerced unity, like, oh yes, we are the masters and you are the slaves. You should do what we say, and we believe that things should be this way and all should conform to our will because we are the masters. And so you have a malformed version of the analog all that can develop, where it still sees reality as being interconnected in a certain way, but in a very negatively oriented master-slave coercion like forced type of way, rather than the development of interconnectedness where we see ourselves as co-creators and we are together collectively creating a new world. And but where we acknowledge some people are better at some things than others. Some people are good at math. Some people are good at art. Some people are good at political views. Some people are good at this. And so we organize the world in a way where people who are best suited to their individual talents and purposes help create the world in the best way possible, rather than this nefarious slave-like structure that can form. But so we have this sort of, we're in this sort of battle here right now to create a new world, this battle of the mind. This is what's happening right now. We are in not a physical war, we are in a battle of ideas right now in where the earth should go, because everything begins as an idea. And right now, especially, just like the analog eye gives one to plan for the future, right? When you have the analog eye, oh, I'm hungry. I should be able to, I need to plan to make sure I have enough food. I need to plan to build a shelter. I need to do all this. And it's done on a different level than instinctual. It allows for much more complex ability. Well, same thing with the analog all. When one develops the analog all, one gains new abilities, the ability to plan for the future in a collective and interconnected way, in which we aren't thinking, when we're thinking on an interconnected level, like, oh, we need to create a world that is beneficial and equitable for all those involved, thus we need to do X, thus we need to do Y, thus we need to do Z. So do you see how the development of the analog all allows one to have new abilities, and this is what is necessary to create a planetary civilization. Just like an instinctual animal can't create a nation, you need self-awareness to create a nation. The analog all and the higher consciousness needs to develop to be able to construct a planetary civilization. Now remember, there are different levels of higher consciousness, just like there's different levels of self-awareness, and this is what is entailed in spiritual evolution or mental evolution, which is the transformation of the mind and to different structures. And so what we ultimately want humanity to do is get to hyper-awareness, which is a very high level of consciousness. And hyper-awareness entails triadic consciousness, which is being able to flip through three different perspectives: the avatar perspective, or the egoic perspective as an individual self-aware mind operating on the analog eye, to the zedic perspective, which is an eternal mind that has existed across lifetimes and is eternal through the development of a zedic analog, and then the absolute perspective, which is understanding that each and every single one of us are nodes in an interconnected holistic system, and ultimately we are that interconnected system experiencing ourselves through a multiplicity of minds as a network mind that's coming to consciousness through us. And this requires the development of the analog all. So you have these different analogs or different structures of the psyche that give us this ability, and ultimately being able to operate between these three in a way that is where we have developed a sufficiently structured analog all that it accurately represents reality so that we're all on the same page, as accurate as possible. Hyper-awareness, this is the development of hyper-awareness. And one gets there through 3 tools: metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. Metacognition is thinking about thinking, self-thinking thought. Self-thinking thought requires you to think about your own structures of mind, integrate the mind, integrate unconscious aspects to think about reality itself, because reality itself is thought. So this is levels of metacognition. Concept networking is putting together apparently disparate subjects together to form a unified holistic pattern. And this is what's necessary for truly developing an accurate analog all. And then phenomenological experience is sort of the idea of what's been called grokking, similar to that, where one understands and experiences what it is like to be that. So rather than just having an intellectual understanding of it, having a first-person subjective experience of understanding what it is like to be the universe experiencing itself. So these tools are all necessary to be able to develop hyper-awareness and to develop these structures. And by the way, like someone had... Like this is something that one can absolutely reach and attain if one does and puts in the work. This isn't like some theoretical state that might exist. No, this is something that I have attained, and I know individuals who have attained it. It's not, like an egoic thing to say it, but it's just a matter of fact. It's a thing that exists and that you can attain. And once you attain it, you're like, oh yeah, duh. Just like when one becomes self-aware, it's like, oh yeah, duh, of course I'm an I, of course I'm an individual. Well, one develops these higher structures of the psyche. It's like, oh yeah, of course we're in this interconnected reality on this journey together. It becomes very obvious and stark and plain. It's not, it's very natural and normal. It's not this, one's not walking around with an aura emanating from them, or has to act like a monk every day or something. It's an actual concrete experience and understanding that one reaches. And this is why we want to help move humanity towards that. Now, so ultimately, all this is happening, and of course, our evolution is bound up with the evolution of reality. So we're having the end of the old world and the birth of the new right now. And this is what we are facilitating. Those of us who are part of this and are working towards creating this. And this is what being a Neogenian is, part of the new beginning and creating a new beginning in oneself and the world, transforming oneself. So all of us who are dedicated to transforming ourselves and transforming the world, all those of us who are part of the Neogenian, all of those who are part of the new beginning are initiating this shift right here and right now. Like this is happening now with us and through us. This is an exciting time to be alive, but we have to be ready and to know what we're up against. And we're up against negative ideas. We wrestle not with flesh and blood. We are up against, ideas. The realm of mind is where we're on a battlefield. Because the problem is that not only do you have negative minds that are, not only do you have people who are just completely ignorant, and because of their ignorance are dragging the world down, but you have minds who are trying to push the world in another direction. So here are the obstacles that we face. We face 2 obstacles. That is the collapse of modern civilization, and this could occur by nuclear war or any kind of global disaster that occurs because we didn't come together. So some global disaster occurs, collapse of modern civilization. Well, guess what? Got to try again, because that's what a planet is here to do. It's to foster that development of a higher consciousness, and ultimately we will evolve into an interconnected network. So if that fails, hey, got to start again. So that's one obstacle that we face, is the collapse of modern civilization. The second obstacle we face is humanity developing into a slave framework. and humanity could develop into a slave framework where it's a coerced unity. And this can happen through the rise of the billionaire elite. And you see this a lot, and this is happening right now. Case in point, everyone's making a big deal about Threads that just came out, which is the competitor to Twitter. But if you look at all of these rich elite who are controlling the means of communication, Elon Musk controlling communication through Twitter, Zuckerberg controlling communication through Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Threads. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting. And all the owners of this, because you control the flow of information. Look at how powerful that is. You cut off communication, you start communication, you allow what communications can go through, you're going to start to control the world. So we're going to see a slave framework start to arise when a billionaire elite start to create a world in which they are the masters and control all the flow of communication. Because if they get to a point, they're going to come to a point where they are more powerful than governments. Now, governments could try and shut them down, but if they, come to at a certain point, they're going to be more powerful. And guess what they can do? They can come forth as sort of saviors through some developments they have or whatever. They can come forward as the saviors of the earth and how they create peace or whatnot. But of course, maybe they do. Maybe they figure out a way to come together and be the saviors to help stop global warming, or somehow find a prevention to nuclear war or whatever. And they're the saviors of humanity. But guess what? They are have either not a developed analog all or a very malformed analog all. So they're going to create a slave-like society where it's like, okay, well, now you're just a consumer, and I don't know, like, I'm just putting this out there, but now everyone's strapped into virtual reality headsets and you have to watch, a 15-second ad before you're allowed to go, access reality. Like if everything's virtual, you're going to have, microtransactions to buy, things for your avatar, or you got to watch this ad to do this. Have to take a shit. Well, got to watch this 30-second ad before you're allowed to take a shit and your toilet will open, or I don't know. I'm just, pulling out random things. And that's just a tiny, this will just get worse and worse and worse as people are just looked at as batteries, as consumers, things to get work and product out of. So that's the other thing so two things we have to look out for: collapse of modern society, and or the development of a slave framework, which would very likely be through the rise and takeover of a rich billionaire elite controlling the means of communication and other methods, of course. So, because look at, look how imagine if the rich started collaborating together rather than being competitors. The world's gonna get fucked. So what we want to do is move the world into a brilliant new future, a new beginning, and this is exactly what we are doing. And we are doing this by spreading consciousness. People are like, how do you do this? How do you do this? Raising awareness, spreading consciousness, because nothing will change if it doesn't. It requires an awakening, because if you don't have an awakening, if you don't have the idea, nothing is going to change. Everything starts out as an idea in mind. If we start having a global mass awakening, a new world will naturally flow from that. Just like when someone starts to become self-aware, they're like, oh, wow, I really need to think about next week where I have, I need to build a shelter. You start, thinking you have this, when you build the analog all, you start thinking, oh shit, we're all in this together. We need to build an interconnected society. We need to stop hating each other and instead learn from each other. And we need to, make sure everyone has rights, and make sure everyone has access to healthcare, and make sure everyone has access to blah, 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 education, et cetera, et cetera. And that's exactly what we want in a teleocratic planetary civilization, by the way, is people have access to universal basic income, universal health care, free education, universal basic housing, all that. And that's absolutely possible to do. People think, oh, wow, that's pie in the sky, utopian thinking. No, it's not. Fuck that. it's bare minimum, and it's what we need to do to start creating a new world. Now, of course, there's going to be a transitory process. Like, we can't just get there instantly, but the way that it begins, the way that it starts, is by having the idea in mind. If you think it can never happen, guess what? It's never going to happen. If everyone thinks that can never happen, it's never going to happen. If everyone thinks we can have that, we'll have it. And this is the true meaning of will forming and having reality conform to one's will and forming what we will. We have to have the idea in mind. And this is the idea of shaping reality. We have to have the idea in mind. Once everyone goes, oh, that's not utopian, we can have that, we can do that. Well, guess what? Then we have the power to do that. So we have the power to change the world. We have the power to create the new beginning. We have the power to create a teleocratic planetary civilization. And it begins with me. It begins with you. It begins with us. And guess what? If you haven't, if a lot of this is confusing to you, it starts with you working on yourself. And if you're not there yet, or you're having a hard time, that's fine. Don't worry. You don't need to go out and start, like, spreading ideas that you aren't familiar with, or doing anything like that. It starts by working on yourself. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy, extended hierarchy of needs, first is self-actualization, then is transcendence. So self-actualization is when one starts to achieve a higher consciousness. In our understanding, it is. And then transcendence is when one then has the ability to help others self-actualize. So transcendence is the state in which you're now able to have others self-actualize. So if you're not at the transcendent level yet, that's okay. Take time for the level before that, which is self-actualization, where you begin to raise your consciousness. So work on yourself, work on your understanding of reality. And that's, if it takes a while, that's fine. Like, this is the thing that we need to do right. And it starts with you, it starts with all of us. So how do you begin? How do you start? Well, it starts with you beginning to raise your consciousness. It starts with you being able to develop your mind and your psyche. And that's what, our system is all about, giving you the tools to be able to do that through inner star actualization, exploring your unconscious mind, understanding hyper-awareness through, the different tools I mentioned, like understanding metacognition and phenomenological experience and all that. All of these are tools to help you. And then once you are at a sufficient level where you feel confident, then you can reach that transcendent phase where you're going out and helping others self-actualize when they need it as well. And this is ultimately how we will create a new world. And this can happen very fast, because you look how fast, the spread of information, the spread of ideas. And I'll say it one more time. The only way this can happen is through a global awakening, a global transformation of chaos, of global transformation of consciousness. Because, it's like if you have a bunch of, you can't. Certain things require a certain level of awareness for it to occur. And a planetary civilization requires a higher consciousness, at least some degree of development of an accurate analog all. So, starts with you, starts with me, starts with all of us. What can you do right now? If you're at that level where you still need to work on yourself, work on yourself. Work on yourself. And if you are at the level where you feel confident, start figuring out ways where you can help move the world forward. That's finding your unique purpose. That might be through music. That might be through art. You know what? Let me read this quote by Lizzie, because Lizzie said something really great. I remember Lizzie said, so don't doubt yourself. Write, sing, create, speak your mind. If you're brave enough, share your values. Above all, share your stories of seeing above the noise of our numerous stories. So, for the more individuals that are committed to this, the less power is given to the oppressive, numbing forces that threaten not only our sanity, but also the amazing potential we have at each moment, the power of awareness that can create a whole new earth. And I love that. Lizzie said that perfectly. That's beautiful. I love it. And see, Lizzie is part of the new beginning. Lizzie is, and I think somewhere in there, she says something along the lines of, I'm not really sure if I'm getting this right, or this is how I understand it. But Lizzie has the ability to write this article. And guess what? Writing this article, what happened? It sparked an idea in me to create a video about this. And now this is going to reach thousands of people, and that will create sparks in thousands of other people to possibly create things for themselves. and I'm trying to and I don't see the quote, but go read this article. It's a really good one. I recommend it. Once again, it's on medium.com, called Spiritual Evolution and the Creation of a Robust Spiritual Society, or Robust Parallel Society, by Lizzie Delfield. Go read it, go follow them. It's a really great article. I highly recommend it. And Lizzie talks about how, well, they're writing this article right now, and that can contribute to change. And that's a great example. And you see this ripple effect, this butterfly effect of how one article, well, that sparked something in me. Now I'm doing this video, thousands of people are seeing it, and this is going to spark something possibly in you, where you go, you know what, I am going to work on raising my consciousness, or you know what, I am going to write that song, or I am going to create that piece of art, or I am going to create that video, or I am going to create that YouTube channel, or I am going to create that band that's about spreading awareness through the lyrics, or whatever. And then that's going to go out, and that's going to affect more people. And this creates that ripple effect across all reality. And this is how when one understands how to do this, you're creating catalysts of transformation that are transforming society, transforming the world, and transforming all of us together. That it's about knowing how to use the butterfly effect through catalyst creation. So there's plenty to do. And once again, where do you start? Start with yourself. Start learning, start understanding. Understand yourself, understand the world. And that's a big task. So take your time with it and don't feel pressured. But I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends, and check out all my other videos. There's a lot more. We're going to have a members only video right now called Is Mathematics Invented, or the Cosmic Code? Check that out. You can be a part of that by becoming a member on YouTube at tier 2 or higher, or any level on Patreon. And as always, I never want anyone to feel pressured to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking and subscribing and sharing these videos. A big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Fairies of Venus, DB, William, Enki, Nucelina, Jose, and everyone else. Thank you very much.